Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys. And you have your scrolling banner there. And I do not have Fat Albert with me because I am working on some Thanksgiving leftovers here. I found a recipe on the internet that was just, I couldn't resist trying it. And I have a lot of it left over from Thanksgiving. M&M's casserole.
I love it. That's great.
Yes, I'm not sure how well this is going to show up against my virtual background here, but let's see. There's the recipe.
M&M casserole. What is it? Take 2 pounds of M&Ms and put them in a container and eat them?
Pretty much. There it says, do not preheat the oven, do not grease the pan, pour half of your bag in there and stir it up, then pour in the other half and stir it up. And you get a nice big thing of M&M's casserole, and I've been working on this since Thanksgiving. And you can see I've not made a whole lot of progress on it.
Hey, let me tell you, people have done worse for Thanksgiving to get out of eating the leftover turkey. It's about time. About the only thing that you can save from Thanksgiving this far out is the stuff. You can freeze it, but all the beans and the meat and even the cranberry, the gelled cranberry and the can, get rid of all that stuff. Don't leave it around. It'll be a biohazard in another couple of weeks.
Indeed. All right. We got a very exciting announcement here on FAIRtax Power Radio. In just a couple of weeks ago, we had Steve Hayes, the president of Americans for Fair Taxation, on talking about a variety of subjects, including the mess in the House of Representatives regarding the speakership and how school vouchers and things are going to be taxed. So if you'd like to check that out, go back to our Rumble archive or our YouTube channel and take a look at that show. But Steve is going to be back with us in 2 weeks on December the 19th because he has been invited to testify before a subcommittee of the House Ways and Means Committee. The Ways and Means Committee has a subcommittee on taxation, and Steve has been invited to testify before that subcommittee here in a short time. And first available time we can have him on after that will be December the 19th, which is 2 weeks from today. And so that's going to be fun. I think it's cool that Congress is even considering talking to him, considering the lack of progress the fair tax has made in the 20 years it's been up there.
Oh, I think there's a larger issue that brings the fair tax closer to the forefront and more in focus is the slippery slope that we find ourselves in with regard to fiscal responsibility out of Washington. And they're ready to get shellacked. All of them are getting ready to get shellacked because of not only that, but other things that are not necessarily related to the fair tax. But tax policy is coming to the forefront in a big way because of the way things have been handled in terms of running our country. They like to spend too much money up there, and it's just too difficult to pay everything back that they've spent in the last 36 or more months.
Well, you go back to what John Linder said a while back here on this program that eventually the Congress critters there are going to realize that the fair tax is their only viable alternative going forward because the income tax system just doesn't work. Sorry, it just doesn't. And I can show you why.
And as I've said over several shows that you have probably as a duty to yourself, your family, and other members of Congress to make sure that gravy train doesn't get disrupted, the one that is built around the tax code. And so I personally think, it's just Bob's opinion, that they're trying to figure out a way to keep that gravy train rolling in the event of we're about ready to fly off the cliff of financial ruin, and unless and until a change is made, but they're trying to figure out how to stay entrenched, if you will, at the same time offer a solution that appears to work or does work for the citizenry, for us, for the
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, taxation, of course, is one of the most heavily lobbied topics in Washington, D.C., but it's far from the only one. So if that one were taken off the table by the FAIRtax, there would still be plenty of work for the lobbyists up there to do. What's the website? I think opensecrets.org was the website that Steve Hayes steered us to a good while back. And you can get some incredible information about how much lobbying goes on, how many dollars are spent, how many subjects are actually lobbied. It's really insane. But speaking of insane, I've got to move on here. We've got to show people what the Congress critters are doing to the tax code, and that makes a tremendously good argument for getting rid of it all and replacing it all with a fair tax. Okay, so our first little goodie this afternoon, or this evening, whenever this is going to stream, will be HR 6532 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide credits for the production of renewable chemicals and investments in renewable chemical production facilities, and your favorite phrase, for other purposes. That comes from Representative Bill Pascrell in New Jersey.
You got to keep that door open. You never know when that particular bill is going to fit the needs of another one coming later for other purposes.
But it's crazy that the Congress critters up there are always trying to use the tax code to monkey with the free enterprise system. If something is going to be productive and profitable, it doesn't need a tax incentive to work. And sometimes they try to get tax penalties to make stuff not work. If they just leave all this garbage out of the tax code and let the free market work, we'd be a whole lot better off. So that's another reason we need to get rid of the income tax and replace it with a fair tax.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
All right, dig this.
By the way, the free market, by the way, is going to continue to react to whatever is imposed upon it, good or bad. The market will react and generally come out okay after slogging through the mud of what Congress tries to throw at it.
Okay, let's move on right quick because we want to get into some more FAIRtax FAQ on this program. But our second Congress.gov bill is a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to allow intangible drilling and development costs to be taken into account when computing adjusted financial statement income. That is S3381.
Okay.
Okay. We'll just let that one go on and let who knows. S30. Let's move on. SR3030. Sometimes you look at this stuff and what is there to say about something like that? 3367 S3367, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code. Now get this: to eliminate tax loopholes that allow billionaires to defer tax indefinitely through planning strategies such as buy, borrow, die, and to modify over 30 tax provisions so that billionaires are required to pay taxes annually and for other purposes. Thank you, Ron Wyden from Oregon, for that one. Let me clue you in on something. If you want billionaires to pay taxes, that could get them to pay taxes almost on a daily basis if we had the fair tax, because they buy things. That's when you collect the fair tax, when somebody buys something and there's no way to defer the tax. You buy it, you pay the tax. End of story. Senator Wyden should be going for the fair tax here.
Jet fuel. Can you imagine? We're going to helicopter fuel. Those things that we don't normally have to. The only thing I buy outside of fuel for my vehicle is the fuel for my lawnmower, or the snowblower, depending on the season. But the everybody talks about the billionaires need to pay their fair share. There's a lot of complicated arguments that can ensue when somebody uses that phrase, but that's sort of the coverall smokescreen phrase that's used to deflect what really is going on in Washington, D.C. with regard to, and it creates a class warfare battle that doesn't need to be fought.
Yes, very simple. Well, we just need a tax code that's not full of loopholes that allow people to defer tax indefinitely or whatever at all. just make everybody pay their taxes at the cash register when they buy things. End of story. No problems, no evasion, hardly at all. And so let's get rid of all this garbage and replace it with a fair tax.
That's right. That's right.
All right, last one. We got to move on. S3365, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to ensure that low alcohol by volume, and this is a word I've never seen before, kombucha, Kombucha. I assume that's an alcoholic drink of some kind. Alcoholic drinks are not my specialty, but they want to be sure that that particular one is exempt from any excise taxes or any regulations under Chapter 53 of such code, which are imposed on alcoholic beverages. And since I don't drink any, I have no clue what that is.
Kombucha with a K?
Kombucha is what this says.
Some kind of a ginger aid kind of deal in some cases, but different. It has different flavors to it. It's also known as a mushroom tea. That's probably where they get.
Okay. Well, I figured you'd know about it.
Well, Dr. Google in front of me here, so I just happened to consult Dr. Google, and it's been around for about 2,000 years. It was first brewed in China and then spread to Japan and Russia. It became popular in Europe in the 20th century. Sales have been on the increase here in the States because of its reputation as a health and energy drink.
Okay, well, this is another one from Senator Wyden from Oregon. He wants to ensure that that particular drink is exempt from excise taxes or any regulations under Chapter 53, which are imposed on alcoholic beverages. So whatever. All right, that's going to be it for Congress.gov. We'll save some for next week. But right now, we had a really interesting program last week here on FairTax Power Radio. We dug into the FAQ, the Frequently Asked Questions repository at fairtax.org. And there is so much there. We got just a little bit of it last week. So we're going to continue that for people who may have questions about how the fair tax works. And again, you just go to fairtax.org. Right in the top menu, there's an FAQ thing, and you dig into that. And I've got you a really good one here. That I hear this a lot of times, especially down here in Florida, where there are a lot of retirees. Are seniors taxed twice on savings? Once when they saved it, and again when they spend it. So people are trying to claim that the fair tax is double taxation, and it really isn't. Oh. And there's a really good reason why it isn't. Go ahead, sir.
Well, the fair tax is basically revenue neutral. It's a revenue neutral proposal raising no more money than does the current system, which is basically what it has to do. It's required in law that whatever you change how you change the method of taxation, it has to bring in the same amount of money. The fair tax only changes where the money is raised, of course, not the dollar amount. Additionally, some erroneously people believe that they invest in an IRA, a Roth, for example, will never pay taxes on this money again. They may not know it, but they are paying corporate income taxes, employer payroll taxes, plus the associated compliance costs hidden in the price of every retail purchase they make. Today,
yes,
the fair tax hidden taxes are driven out of the retail prices, Fair tax, hidden taxes are driven out of the retail prices. And note, they can determine the amount of tax they pay through their own lifestyle choices. That's you, me, and everybody else saying, you know what, I'm going to save my money instead of buying a new yacht. Or
that's just it. People that are making that argument that the fair tax double taxes senior savings are totally blind to the fact that the current income tax system double taxes these savings, because all of these tax costs that you don't see. That's why they're not aware. They're not aware that they're being taxed a second time, but you're being taxed a second time every time you buy something. Because all of the corporate taxes, the employer payroll taxes, all of those taxes that are imposed on businesses are simply costs of doing business. They are passed on to consumers, and we, the consumer, pay them when we buy things. So you are being double taxed in either case, if you want to look at it that way. The fair tax is just a little bit more honest. They show you where the tax is coming from, and the current system does not. They just bury those costs in the prices of everything we buy.
That's right. Okay, so let me just put it this way. Senior citizens, like all Americans, do not lose purchasing power, but actually gain it. The fair tax preserves the purchasing power of Social Security benefits now not taxed, and seniors receive a monthly prebate like everybody that's a legal citizen of the United States does in the family or individual. So they don't pay taxes on the purchase of necessities. In other words, the prebate untaxes the family or the individual up to the poverty level. It's decided upon, the amount every year is decided upon. Tax-deferred investments get a one-time windfall. Savings invested in any long-term income-generating assets such as stock, real estate, or long-term bond that can't be called increase substantially in value. And the big kahuna is that all the estate planning that you have to do, the complexities of managing that, is an artifact of an earlier age. Doesn't that sound nice?
Yes, whoever wrote that was really right on it that day. So let's move on here. If we're going to collect the fair tax at the retail level, then it's fair to ask the question, what economic changes come about at the retail level with the fair tax?
Well, it's quite simple. We have been trained to spend money before inflation eats up the money or savings are taxed away, the amount of money we save. The baby boomer group, for good or evil, will likely spend their initial pay raise. In other words,
initial pay raise. You get the money that is currently being withheld and sent to Uncle Sam. No withholding, no payroll taxes. Bring home your entire paycheck. You will get a significant pay raise on the day that the fair tax is enacted.
The very day. And others are going to recognize the advantages of savings and investment. And I've said all along,
you hit on that a lot.
Savings are important, and it gives people an opportunity, especially folks that are on the lower income scale, the lower end of the ladder, that are trying to make something for their family. And they have an opportunity. Folks have an opportunity, working hard. Maybe it's a single mom and she's got 2 jobs to help pay for everything that has to happen. Here's the opportunity to, number one, fair tax. You get that raise, you get the prebate. Now you're on a course where quite possibly in a generation or two, you are able to have your family lifted to another level of income. And you can live your life instead of stringing your daily activities between how do I get to this job to pay for that job, to get some gas, to go get the groceries, to pay for the groceries, etc. There's likely going to be a lot of interest in the actual cost of the federal government when consumers see their most recent contribution at the bottom of each retail receipt, because when you go buy something, ding, you get the receipt and it shows you what the fair tax is on that item.
That's one of the reasons the Congress critters love the income tax. They can hide from you what it's actually costing you. So with a fair tax, every time you buy something, you will see at the bottom of your receipt exactly how much the federal government is costing you. And they're afraid that when people realize how much of their money the federal government is taking, they may get a little testy about it and start demanding some changes.
So, and it's like we used to say a long time ago when we were writing out payroll checks, that the challenges that the individual face, they see that net number and they got it on the check paid to the order of Bob, and it's $100, but it's got everything. It's got taxes taken out of it. That whole, deduction thing that happens, the employer becomes the agent for the federal government to collect the tax. We always used to say, well, hey, you know what? Why don't we just let the employee write the check to the federal government every month? We'd have been locked. We'd had this whole thing locked up 30 years ago or more. If people had to pay it directly to the coffers of the U.S. Treasury instead of letting the employer pay it. So the fair tax is neutral, as we said. It's revenue neutral. The same amount of resources is extracted from the economy as is extracted under the current law. The funds are, however, extracted in a less economically damaging way. Every known economic projection shows the economy doing better, much often better, with the fair tax. And the thing about it is you have all of the costs that go into the manufacture of a product or the delivery of a service will draw away. So the amount the dollar amount of your purchase will go down, but the fair tax will come in, so you really won't have a larger amount to pay for something. As a lot of people like to say, it's going to be an extra 30% on top of what you're paying now, and that's not the case.
Mm-hmm. I do. That's just not right. But let's move on here. How about you run across these people, you hear it all the time. Corporations have to pay their fair share. And the idea of eliminating the corporate income tax, as the fair tax will do, is just, they recoil in horror at the thought of that. But the real question you need to ask here, will corporations get a windfall with the abolition of the corporate income tax and the adoption of the fair tax?
Well, corporations are just fictitious. They're just a legal framework that cloaks, depending on the type of corporation it is, the individuals that are running it. They have not, do not, and never will be bearing the burden of taxation. Only people, you and I, pay taxes. If you go out and let's tax the automotive industry, we're going to put 3 cents a gallon, 3 cent a car tax on all the vehicles produced that that are going out of the manufacturing plant. Now, where do you think if that $3 cost, or 3 cents or whatever the number is, goes on that car, it's going to end up on the sticker somewhere.
Absolutely. As we mentioned just a few minutes ago, corporations do not pay taxes. They write a check to Uncle Sam, but then they pass that cost right on down the line, mostly to their consumers, but it will also cost their shareholders as well, usually in the form of lower dividends. And it will usually cost their employees in, lower pay and less benefits. If they didn't have to pay those taxes, they'd have the money to do stuff like that. But instead, they just pass those costs right on down the line. Corporations don't pay taxes. So when you abolish the corporate income tax, that's not a tremendous difference in the way the taxes are collected. But you just you relieve the corporations of all the burden of complying with the tax code, and watch the economy take off. It's just going to be amazing.
Talk about that even for small businesses, a one-man band or maybe a two-person husband and wife team that run a business. They have to spend a considerable amount of their time keeping up with.
What would it mean to your radio station down there if you didn't have to deal with the IRS and the income tax code?
Probably have a little more hair on top of my head, for one thing, and the other side of it is the creativity, the component of time. Time is finite. You only have a certain amount of time that you have to do things during the day: eat, sleep, go to church, play with the kids, play with the grandkids, travel, work on your business, work at your business. But if you're a single operator, you're going to be at home, and you're going to be things that are time. So time management is critical, but the amount of time that you have to spend will be opened up when you don't have to deal with the compliance component of keeping up with the receipts, dealing with the CPAs at the different cycles during the year that you do so, especially around tax time. The tax season begins in January every year, and folks that are running their own business are throwing, getting all the reports together that have to be sent in, and all of that will go away. And
exactly what happens here, Bob, if a company or a business tries to reap that windfall by having that costs drop out of their cost of doing business, but they keep their prices exactly the same as they are. So we're just going to keep this money that we were sending to Uncle Sam. The competitive pressures in a free market economy is not going to let that happen. Because all it takes is one company in a particular industry to say, wait a minute, I'm going to pass these savings on to my customers. I'm going to get I'm going to undercut my competitors on price and increase my market share. And we see that every single time. As soon as one airline announces a fair cut, all of them copy it. And that's what's going to happen here when the corporate income tax goes away.
And the gas stations as a real world example of that, just as the airline tickets are. You can go, one gas station is at 304 and 9/10 a gallon. The other was at 309. The first one decides he's going to go to 299, and the other one has to move his price down.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm old enough to remember gas wars when the price of gas was about 15 cents a gallon.
That's how the market works. The market is going to take care of all of those things, and the amount of money that the individual gets in their paycheck back, they don't have the federal taxes to deal with there. They get the prebate. The business gets to innovate and maybe give a raise to the employee or hire a couple of more people because they have that time. And then the thinking cap goes on and they are able to innovate, and they're using all that extra time to think about, how can I serve my customers better? How can I serve my community better? And the psychological part of the lifting of that burden at the psychological level of not having to deal with the Internal Revenue Service is really more significant than most people will realize
So the short answer, will corporations reap a windfall from the elimination of the corporate income tax? The answer to that is a resounding no, ain't going to happen. And I'm afraid we're running really short on time here on FairTax Power Radio. Let me remind everybody again who might not have tuned in at the beginning of the program to be with us in 2 weeks. On December 19th, we're going to have Steve Hayes back. He has been invited to testify before a subcommittee of the House Ways and Means Committee, and we're going to have him on here in a couple of weeks to recount that story and kind of see what the pulse of the Congress critters are relative to the fair tax. Because again, we have been promised a vote in the House of Representatives. I wonder if this testimony is related to that. We'll have to ask him and see. So be sure to catch us here in a couple of weeks when Steve Hayes will be on talking about his testimony before Congress.
That's great. That's good. And Steve, as a font of knowledge, has been involved with fair tax at the Americans for Fair Taxation since the beginning. And this House Ways and Means Committee subcommittee on tax is a phenomenal. It's something that we've been pushing for a long time. The folks in Congress know what's getting ready to happen if they don't do something about the tax code or how our government is operated. Everybody knows it. Nobody wants to talk about it. This is an opportunity that we've been waiting for.
Okay, well, I say in the past 2 weeks we've here on FairTax Power Radio, we've been digging into the FAQ at fairtax.org. There's still a lot there that we didn't have time to get to. So I would suggest that if you want to educate yourself on the fair tax or point people who have questions about the fair tax to where they can get answers, just go to fairtax.org, open up the FAQ, read it top to bottom. Go into the research tab and you can find more material on particular things that you may be interested in. But it's all there at fairtax.org, and it doesn't cost you a dime. There's no payrolls, there's no paywalls, there's no subscriptions, no nothing. It's just there. Read it for you. And I'm afraid that's going to wrap up this edition of FairTax Power Radio. Thank you again so much for watching, listening, and sharing the videos. Until we meet again, I'm Bob Paxton.
Bob Scarborough.
We are the FairTax Guys, reminding you the fair tax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So what would you do for her?
Well, we've got several programs that will help her. We just need to find out how much she makes. But the good news is, the less she does, the more we can help.
Yeah.
If I may, with the fair tax, we wouldn't even tax her income. So the more she makes, the more she has.
But still, a consumption tax could eat up a lot of her income.
Which is why at the beginning of every month, we're actually going to give back all that she pays in taxes on basic necessities.
You're going to give her back her taxes?
Every month, on everything taxed on basic necessities. But we're also going to give it back to you and to every American citizen.
Why?